review because, there's a shortage of a lot of really great news as COVID continues its grip around the world and at home. So kudos supposedly to Australian medical device manufacturer Uscom. It's just put out a patented ventilator test in what looks like a win for Aussie innovation. Executive Chairman Professor Rob Phillips joins us now live via Skype. Hey, listen, welcome to the program. Great to have you here with us. There is a bit of skepticism these days when we see COVID in a update coming from a company. So tell us exactly what your new product, your VENTITEST device, what problem does it solve?
Look, it simply solves the need for managing the performance of ventilators. And I should assure listeners that we've been in infectious diseases for 15 years. We're not new to COVID. We've been endorsed by the People's Republic of China and the international guidelines on sepsis and sepsis guidelines for the preferred treatment of COVID. So we're not new to understanding the challenges with cardiovascular pulmonary effects of COVID. And obviously one of those things is pneumonia. Obviously that needs some sort of ventilatory support with the impairment of lung function. Now, ventilators are everywhere, as we know, and we partly came into this area because we were invited to start building ventilators. What we suddenly realised, ventilators are easy to build. What you really need to know is how you're actually going to calibrate them and make sure precisely that they give you the appropriate volume and flow of air into the lungs. Too much and too little is likely to lead to bad outcomes. So we've already worked in the space, or are already working in the space of pulmonary measuring. And so we adapted the technology that we have into a very precise form of technology that can allow people to monitor and see whether their ventilators are starting to slip and need to be recalibrated. So it's just an accurate method of measuring and managing the effectiveness of ventilation.
Okay, just to be clear on the business model, is this software as a service, is this a device, or is it both?
Well, it is both. You know, there's a capital sale involved, and that is everybody who's got ventilators need a VENTITEST solution so that their people can go around each day or each afternoon and measure and make sure it works. So everybody who's got ventilators, and there is an absolute explosion of the ventilator market at the moment, as we all know. The second stage, of course, is that this is sort of specialised calibration technology, and so it's possible to establish a cloud-based or service-based model, and that's going to be the second phase of our development from here on in. First phase is really to roll it out and to optimize its performance in clinical utility, and the second is to bring in or introduce the service-based, cloud-based model.
Okay, so what is the size of this potential market? And I suppose more importantly, before that, how do you get this to market? Who are your distribution partners? What's the plan for that?
Look, we're a medical device company, and we already have regional headquarters in Singapore. We've got a wholly owned subsidiary in Beijing. We've got a manufacturing outpost in Budapest. We've got distribution in the US. So we have got global distribution. Now, the challenge is always in medical devices is regulatory, but this device is not a medical device, and so it has a quick track to market because it's a calibration of a device, not a medical device for contact with patients. The same precision, or actually higher levels of precision, are required to make the devices work, but the pathway is simply a notification to market in some markets and a short notice to file for other markets, because it is a modification of digital ultrasonic multipath technology that we've been working with for 10 years or so, and we've combined it with a piezo-resistive monolithic sensor. So what it does, it's just improving it, making it a lot more easy to measure pressure and flow. Market will be using our conventional pathways, and we've got a lot of enthusiasm for dealers. Obviously, with the explosion of the ventilator market, there are a lot of people looking for VENTITEST solutions.
And you've said that VENTITEST diversifies the product portfolio of Uscom, which is what? Tell us about it.
Look, we've got three product suites, if you like, and these are clinical suites. There's the Uscom 1A, which is the actual device which has been recommended for treatment for COVID and has been in sepsis and septic shock for the last 15 years. It's now in the guidelines, and suddenly everybody's discovered COVID. We've been working in this space for 15 years. Like I say, we've written many papers on it, and it's our territory. This is just an expansion into it. The other area that we work in is central blood pressure, so it's cardiovascular pulmonary circulation. Central blood pressure is really important, and our device is on the International Space Station. And then, of course, we've got the Spirosonic devices, which are devices to accurately measure pulmonary function. And this is what we've adapted to make the VENTITEST device. And that's why we could get it to market so quickly. We've got it to market now. It looked like it'll be in 2 months. By the time we now get approvals, it'll be 1 to 3 months before we should be in all our major markets.
Okay, interesting. I know that you've done manufacturing in China in the past. You've also expanded to have that into parts of Europe, correct me if I'm wrong, potentially North America as well. So through this whole pandemic, when it comes to your wider product suite, have you had any sort of supply chain issues? How have you been coping through this pandemic?
Look, it's been a wave, if you like. When China first was in the pandemic, it was very difficult communicating. We were working with our partners in Wuhan and Beijing and Xiamen and Chongqing, and it was difficult just communicating. As that started to settle, they became very aware that they needed to upgrade their facilities and installations, both for further waves of COVID and for other infectious diseases in coming years. At the same time, that wave then moved across to Europe, and Europe then became engaged and disappeared from our view, if you like, and now it's moved on to the US as Europe's coming back on board. But look, it's been a little bit of a challenge, but we really haven't been significantly impaired with our channels. We get most of our materials from China. We assemble many of them here, and we also manufacture in Europe. So we are looking at where the most cost-effective volume manufacturing options are for us. Particularly now we've got the new VENTITEST solution in the market and seeing such a strong market demand for it.
Okay, it all sounds really positive. So what is the next challenge? What's next on the agenda? Do you have enough cash and reserves to help fuel your future ambitions?
Look, we've been fortunate. We restructured everything in the first half of last financial year, and the second half of the financial year with COVID, etc., even with COVID, we grew by, I think, 86% for the second half. It was the first time we were cash flow positive and profitable, and it was a direct product of that global restructure. And so, look, we seem to have cash in the bank at the moment. You can never be too confident about where the world economy is going, but I think we've got diversified technologies in diversified markets, absolutely critical because they're cardiovascular pulmonary. They're things we can't do without. And we've expanded now into the medical testing market, in which there is an incredible demand and a tenfold predicted growth in demand to 27 billion in the next 7 years. So for us, this is a very logical expansion of our core business and an exploitation or utilisation of really high quality in-house technologies that we've worked with for 15 years. So I think we've got the cash at the moment, and we're anticipating having the revenues, and we're still growing at 40% per annum, even without the VENTITEST device. So I'm optimistic, but cautious.
But what about staffing? You know, is all of this development and R&D being done here in Australia? How do you sort of find the economic environment here, but more importantly, the skills base?
Look, it's really challenging. We did a lot of the development for this device through Budapest, where we've got an R&D establishment over there, and spirometry and pulmonary flow monitoring has been a part of their culture, if you like, and they developed the Spirosonic technologies, and we acquired that company. Obviously, that's come in-house, but it really is a challenge, and that is being a small company. You've got to be. It's the most difficult of both worlds. When you're small, you've got a single product. Your exit strategy is very simple. You just get sold and taken over. Our ambition is to become a large multinational, and we're building a footprint in that space. We recognise R&D is an incredibly critical part of that growth, and managing folk across Australia, Singapore, China, Budapest, and the US does have its challenges. But we're a young, small, energetic company. We're ambitious, and we've got fantastic technologies, and you've got to trust that the proof and the value of those technologies will be proven ultimately. We're saving lives every day, and we've got skill sets in-house, and that's the platform that will build our business going forward.
Professor Rob Phillips, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you well on your journey. We'll check in again.
Thanks so much for having me.